So, on Thursday, August the 13th, 2026, Apple confirmed that it sent out Apple threat notifications to iPhone users in 110 countries worldwide. And this is actually the largest single wave of these notifications the company has ever sent out. In today's video, I wanted to break down exactly what this means, why it happened, who's actually at risk, and most importantly, what you need to do right now if you happen to see one of these Apple threat notifications pop up on your own device. So stick around, because this is one of those videos that could genuinely help protect your data if you or someone you know ends up receiving one of these. Now, let's start with what actually happened. Apple confirmed directly to TechCrunch that on Thursday, August the 13th, it sent out threat notifications to users it believes were targeted in 110 countries. Now, to put that number in perspective, Apple has been running this threat notification program since late 2021, and over that time it says it has now notified customers in more than 150 countries total. So this single wave, 110 countries in one day, is a massive chunk of that overall total, and researchers are calling it the largest and most geographically widespread batch of notifications the program has ever sent out. Now here's something interesting. Apple did not say how many individual people received the notification. They only confirmed the number of countries. And Apple has been very consistent about this. They don't attribute these attacks to any specific government, company, or spyware vendor. In their own words, the extreme cost, sophistication, and worldwide nature of mercenary spyware attacks make them some of the most advanced digital threats that exist today. And because of that, Apple says it doesn't publicly point fingers at who's behind any particular wave. So let's talk about what Apple threat notifications actually are, for those of you who may be hearing about this for the first time. According to Apple's own support documentation, these threat notifications are designed to inform and assist users who may have been individually targeted by mercenary spyware attacks, likely because of who they are or what they do. So this isn't your everyday malware or a random phishing text. This is a specific category of attack tied to something called mercenary spyware, which is spyware developed by private companies and then sold, usually to governments or government-linked organizations, for the purpose of secretly monitoring specific individuals. You've probably heard of Pegasus before, made by a company called NSO Group. That's the most well-known example of mercenary spyware out there, and it's actually been in the news a lot recently because of ongoing legal battles. A federal court found NSO Group liable for violating anti-hacking laws in a case brought by WhatsApp's parent company, and a jury awarded roughly $167 million in damages back in May of 2025. A permanent injunction against NSO actually took effect in January of 2026. And get this, Meta has since filed a new motion accusing NSO of running fresh spyware campaigns against WhatsApp users within days of that injunction going into effect. So even with lawsuits and court orders piling up, this industry keeps operating. Now, unlike normal cybercrime, which tends to cast a wide net and go after as many random victims as possible, mercenary spyware attacks are built to go after a very small number of very specific individuals. That's actually one of the reasons they're so dangerous. These attacks usually involve something called a zero-click exploit, meaning the target doesn't even have to click a link or open an attachment for the spyware to get onto their device. It can arrive through something as simple as a message on iMessage or WhatsApp containing an image, and the software silently exploits a flaw in the operating system to install itself without you ever knowing. And once spyware like this is on a device, it's incredibly invasive. It can potentially give an attacker access to your messages, your photos, your microphone, your camera, your location, and even encrypted conversations on apps like Signal and WhatsApp, because the spyware is reading the data before or after encryption happens, not intercepting it in transit. That's why Apple takes this seriously enough to build an entire notification system dedicated to warning people. So now let's talk about who typically gets targeted by this kind of attack. Historically, Apple has said these notifications tend to go to journalists, human rights activists, political dissidents, diplomats, and government officials. Basically, people whose work or position makes them valuable targets for surveillance. But according to security experts commenting on this most recent wave, that target list appears to be expanding. Adam Boynton, a senior enterprise strategy manager at the device management company Jamf, pointed out that the economics of mercenary spyware mean the pool of targets increasingly includes corporate executives, negotiators, and really anyone who holds access to sensitive or privileged information. So if one of these notifications lands on a work device, he says it should be treated as a security incident starting from the very first minute. And this wave in particular has gotten a lot of attention because of who's reportedly been affected. According to reporting from TechCrunch, some of the people who received notifications in this latest batch include members of Ukraine's military. One Ukrainian soldier publicly shared that he received the notification and said he was actually surprised because he didn't think he was important enough to be a target. He also mentioned that other soldiers in his unit received the same kind of notification. Mohammed Al-Maskati, who directs the digital security helpline at a nonprofit called Access Now, told TechCrunch that his organization has seen a record number of people reaching out for help since this wave went out, with inquiries running somewhere around 30 to 40% higher than what they typically see. John Scott Railton, a senior researcher at the Citizen Lab, was actually the one who first flagged this latest batch publicly, and he made a really important point. He said the scale and geographic spread of people publicly posting about receiving these notifications is unprecedented, and he described it as just the visible tip of a much bigger iceberg, meaning for every person who posts publicly about getting one of these alerts, there are almost certainly a huge number of others who never say anything at all. He said that alone is a clear sign that something bigger is going on behind the scenes. Now, researchers have also pointed to real-world impact from these notifications in the past. Citizen Lab has credited Apple's notification system with helping expose how Poland's previous government allegedly misused Pegasus spyware against political opponents, which became a major issue during their elections, and even led to an investigation under the current administration led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk. So these notifications haven't just been theoretical warnings, they've actually played a role in surfacing real abuses of power in the past. Okay, so let's get into how these notifications actually reach you, because Apple has updated this process, and it's a bit more robust now than it used to be. Number one, the notification can be delivered directly to the email address associated with your Apple account. You'll see a message coming from an address like threat notifications at email.apple.com, and it will say something like, Apple detected a mercenary spyware attack targeted at your iPhone, and that there are actions you can take now to help protect your data and your device. Number two, and this is new for this wave, the notification now appears directly on your iPhone's lock screen as a push notification. In the past, these alerts mostly lived in email or inside your settings, but for the first time, Apple is surfacing them right on the lock screen, which makes it a lot more likely that people will actually see it and take action quickly. Number three, you'll also see the notification appear inside your Settings app. If you go into Settings and scroll down, there will be a threat notification banner sitting right there letting you know. And number four, Apple also displays a threat notification banner at the top of your Apple account page when you sign in at account.apple.com. So altogether, that's 4 separate ways Apple is trying to make sure this message actually reaches you. Because in the past, some notifications may have gone unnoticed, sitting quietly in an inbox. Now, it's also worth pointing out that this whole notification system exists inside a much bigger conversation happening right now about encryption and government access to data. In early 2025, the UK government reportedly issued a secret order demanding that Apple build a backdoor into iCloud's encrypted storage. Rather than comply and weaken encryption for everyone, Apple made the decision to disable its advanced data protection feature for all UK users. What that means practically is that the strongest tier of end-to-end encryption Apple offers for iCloud backups still isn't available to people in the UK, even now. So while this threat notification story is specifically about targeted spyware, it's really part of a larger ongoing tug of war between tech companies trying to protect user privacy and governments, trying to gain more visibility into people's data. I think it's helpful context because it shows that Apple's stance on privacy and security isn't just about spyware notifications. It's a much bigger ongoing fight happening across multiple fronts. Now, I want to be really clear about something because this is important and it's easy to misunderstand. Receiving one of these notifications does not automatically mean your device has been hacked or compromised. Apple has said that a threat notification means they have a high level of confidence that you may have been individually targeted, not that an attack was definitely successful. Apple itself has acknowledged that its detection is based on internal threat intelligence, and that it can never achieve what they call absolute certainty. So think of it less like a confirmation of a hack, and more like a serious, credible warning that you specifically may be in the crosshairs of a sophisticated actor, and that you should act accordingly. So now let's get into the part you're probably most interested in, what you should actually do if you see one of these Apple threat notifications. Now, the very first thing, and Apple stresses this heavily, is to enable lockdown mode. Here's exactly how to do that. You're going to open up your Settings app on your iPhone. From there, scroll down until you find the Privacy and Security section and tap into that. Once you're inside Privacy and Security, keep scrolling all the way down to the bottom of that page, and you're going to see an option called Lockdown Mode. Tap into it and you'll be able to turn it on from there. Now, what does lockdown mode actually do? It's essentially an extreme optional protection feature that Apple built specifically for the small number of people who might be personally targeted by sophisticated digital threats like mercenary spyware. When it's enabled, it significantly reduces the attack surface of your device by limiting certain features that are commonly abused in these kinds of exploits. For example, it restricts most message attachment types other than certain images, it blocks link previews in messages, it limits complex web technologies while browsing, it blocks incoming FaceTime calls from people you haven't previously called, and it prevents wired connections to accessories when your phone is locked, which closes off a common physical attack route. Apple has said that, as of now, lockdown mode has never been defeated in any confirmed, publicly documented case, which really tells you how effective this feature can be when it's turned on. Now, I do want to mention, lockdown mode is going to change how your phone behaves day to day. It's meant to be restrictive, so certain apps and features may not work the way you're used to. But if you've received an actual threat notification, that trade-off is absolutely worth it. Because the whole point is to make it dramatically harder for that spyware to gain a foothold on your device. And one more thing on lockdown mode that I think is genuinely reassuring. Turning it on does not require you to wipe your device, reset it, or lose any of your data. It's not some drastic factory reset situation. It's simply a toggle that reconfigures how certain apps and system features behave in the background to close off common attack pathways. You can turn it on in a matter of seconds from that privacy and security menu, and you can turn it back off later, the same way if you ever need to. Although if you've received an actual threat notification, Apple and most security experts would recommend keeping it on until you've gotten expert guidance on your specific situation. It's also worth understanding that each individual spyware attack can look a little different under the hood, since these vendors are constantly changing their techniques to get around whatever protections Apple has already patched. That's exactly why Apple doesn't just tell you to turn on lockdown mode and call it a day. In the notification itself and in the follow-up email, Apple typically provides additional guidance that's more specific to the situation and points you toward outside experts who can dig deeper into what actually happened on your device. So lockdown mode is step one, the first and fastest thing you can do. But it's really meant to buy you protection while you get more tailored help. The second thing you're going to want to do is reach out for expert help, rather than trying to handle this entirely on your own. Apple specifically recommends contacting the digital security helpline run by Access Now, which is a nonprofit that provides 24/7 emergency security assistance to civil society groups, journalists, and other individuals who may be facing this kind of targeted threat. You can find them by searching Access Now Digital Security Helpline, and they can walk you through additional steps that are specific to your exact situation, since every attack can look a little different depending on the vulnerability being exploited. The third thing to do is verify that the notification you received is actually legitimate and not a scam. Because, let's be honest, anytime something like this makes headlines, scammers try to take advantage of it by sending fake threat notification emails designed to trick people into clicking malicious links or handing over their Apple ID credentials. The safest way to verify a real notification is to sign in directly at account.apple.com yourself, not through any link in an email, and check whether a threat notification banner appears there. If it's a real notification, it will always show up on that page when you're logged in. The fourth thing you should do is make sure your device software is fully up to date. Go into Settings, then General, then Software Update, and install the latest version of iOS. Apple regularly patches security vulnerabilities, and a lot of these mercenary spyware attacks rely on exploiting flaws that get fixed once Apple becomes aware of them. So running the latest version of iOS closes off some of those doors. And fifth, going forward, it's a good idea to review the basic security practices Apple recommends for everyone, even if you never personally receive one of these notifications. That includes keeping your devices updated, using a strong device passcode rather than a simple PIN, enabling two-factor authentication on your Apple account, being cautious about links and attachments from unknown senders, and periodically reviewing which apps and accessories have access to your device. Now, I do want to reassure you guys, because this is important. Not everyone is going to see one of these notifications, and honestly, most people watching this video probably never will. Apple has been very clear that the vast majority of users will never be targeted by mercenary spyware, because these attacks are extremely expensive to develop and deploy, and they're reserved for very specific high-value targets, not the general public. Security experts have echoed this too, even with a notification campaign spanning 110 countries. That doesn't mean the average iPhone user is suddenly at risk. It sounds alarming on the surface, but it's really not something the everyday person needs to lose sleep over. That said, if you are someone whose work puts you in a more sensitive position, journalists, activists, lawyers, government workers, people in the military, executives handling confidential negotiations, or frankly, anyone who deals with information that a state actor or well-funded organization might want access to, this is exactly the kind of warning you don't want to ignore. And honestly, even if you don't fall into any of those categories, it's still worth understanding how this system works, because exploits developed for narrow targeted attacks like these have a track record of eventually leaking out, getting reverse engineered, resold, or adapted by other groups down the line. So today's narrowly targeted threat can sometimes become tomorrow's broader problem. I also think it's worth mentioning just how large this particular industry has become, because that context helps explain why Apple keeps having to send these waves of notifications year after year. Mercenary spyware isn't run by some tiny underground operation anymore. It's an entire commercial industry made up of private companies that build these tools and then sell access to governments and other paying clients around the world. And because these vendors operate across so many different countries with different laws and different levels of oversight, it's extremely difficult for any single company, even one as large as Apple, to shut the problem down entirely. What Apple can do, and what it's clearly trying to do with this notification system, is give individual targets enough warning and enough tools to protect themselves once an attack has been detected. That's really the philosophy behind the whole program, since it can't stop spyware companies from operating. It focuses on empowering the people being targeted. It's also worth noting that Apple has sent these kinds of notifications several times over just the past year or so, including waves in April, July, and September of 2025, along with an earlier round that reportedly reached about 100 countries roughly a year before this latest one. So this isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing pattern, and this most recent wave in August of 2026 is simply the largest and most widely distributed one Apple has sent to date. Given that pattern, it's reasonable to expect Apple will likely continue sending these notifications periodically going forward, as mercenary spyware vendors continue developing new techniques and Apple continues detecting new campaigns. So to recap everything we covered today, Apple confirmed to TechCrunch that on Thursday, August the 13th, 2026, it sent threat notifications to users in 110 countries, making this the largest wave in the program's history, and bringing the total number of countries notified since 2021 to more than 150. These notifications are meant to warn people who may have been individually targeted by mercenary spyware, and they now arrive through your lock screen, inside settings, by email, and through a banner on your Apple account page. Getting one doesn't necessarily mean you've been hacked, but it does mean Apple has high confidence you are specifically targeted, and that warrants immediate action. If you ever see one of these, head into Settings, then Privacy and Security, scroll to the bottom and enable lockdown mode right away. Then reach out to the Digital Security Helpline at Access Now for tailored guidance, verify the notification through your Apple account directly, and make sure your device is fully updated. Again, not everyone will see this, and for most of you watching, this is simply good information to have in your back pocket. But if you or someone you know ever does receive an Apple threat notification, don't brush it off. Take it seriously, follow these steps, and get expert help as quickly as you can. I'll also say this, if you work in a field where you think you could realistically be a target down the road, journalism, activism, government, legal work, or anything along those lines, it might actually be worth proactively checking your Apple account page every so often, just to see if a banner has ever appeared, rather than waiting to stumble across an email that could easily get buried in your inbox. And if you're someone who manages devices for other people, whether that's an IT department, a nonprofit, or even just a family member who isn't as tech savvy, it's worth having a conversation with them now about what a legitimate Apple threat notification looks like, so they're not caught off guard or tricked by a scam version of it later. A little bit of awareness now goes a long way if this situation ever actually comes up. At the end of the day, the biggest takeaway here isn't really about panicking over spyware. It's about knowing what a real Apple threat notification looks like, understanding that it's a serious but narrowly targeted warning rather than proof of a hack, and knowing exactly which buttons to press if it ever does show up on your screen. Settings, Privacy and Security, scroll to the bottom, lockdown mode. That's the one thing I want you to walk away from this video remembering. If this video helped clear things up for you, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you're new here, consider subscribing, because I cover tech security and privacy topics like this one on a regular basis. And staying informed is genuinely one of the easiest ways to keep yourself and your devices protected. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this information helpful, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.